Hello. Intimidating microphone. So, who do we have here? Who's all here?
One from everybody. One. We're with 88.3 WMTS. It's a college radio station.
Oh, cool.
And
Okay.
then we're just getting some stuff for that and the college TV station too called MT10. So
Oh, cool.
double
A radio brethren.
Yeah.
Good to see you here. Well, who wants to start?
First of all, thank you for attending GMX. We appreciate you having here and taking the time to speak with us. What are some projects that you're working on that you're able to talk about right now, if any?
Well, there are several, but then I'd have to kill everybody in the room.
Okay.
And since he's the chief, he can do that.
That would make for a short meeting. First of all, who are you with?
My name is John. I'm with the Chainsaw Buffet podcast. We do video games, anime, pop culture, that sort of thing.
Well, as you, I'm sure know, we're sort of in between Halos at the moment. And there's very little I can tell you about Halo 5, quite frankly, because I know very little about it. I'm sort of on a need-to-know basis with 343, and right now I don't need to know. So, but you know, most of what I know, you know. Of course, there's a new Xbox coming out, Xbox One. And I gotta believe that there'll be a Halo to follow, but we're not working on anything. I'm not working on anything with them at the moment. I'm pretty sure there'll be something coming in the near future, but at the moment I'm not working on anything with them. As I think you know, I do a radio show in Chicago on a station called The Drive. We're a classic rock station, and that's my day job, which I do 5 days a week. And I do the morning show there, and that occupies quite a bit of my time. That and cons like this, so there's a lot of that going on. But other than that, and I do commercial voiceover, and so that's sort of an ongoing concern. But that's pretty much my life on a day-to-day basis. Sorry, I don't have more information on that. But like I said, I'm on a need-to-know basis, and they keep me out of the loop, so I can't accidentally say something that they would prefer I wouldn't say at this moment. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Richie from the Fairy Tale podcast. I'm the one that dropped the card right there
Oh,
in front of you.
Richie?
So,
Okay, cool.
One of the things I wanted to ask about were what are some of the differences in the character when you were going from like the earlier trilogy from Halo to 4? Because I know it was a much more personal story with the fourth game. So what were some of the more subtle ways that you kind of changed the character to make it a little more personal?
Well, it was going into Halo 4. First of all, it was really exciting for me where they took the character. It's what, as we developed through the series, it's what I always hoped would happen, is that there's a bigger story with Master Chief than what was being told in the games, and each game it got a little bigger, but it was still, he was still the man of few words, and the relationship between he and Cortana was one that you sort of had to use your imagination with. Well, with Halo 4, when 343 took it over, they made it apparent to me early on that we were going to develop that story. And the whole process was different for me. When we did the first 3 games, and then the little stuff that I did on Reach, I worked at a studio in Chicago. It was a very sort of isolating experience, as most voiceover is. I mean, you walk into a little booth, the size of a phone booth, and do your lines, and somebody will say, "That's great, do it again," and that's the sort of the experience of it. Well, with Halo 4, it was a completely different thing. It was the first time I ever got a script in advance. Most of the time, I'd get the script the day I went in to do the reads. This time, because the story was going to be more involved, it was going to require more from me from an emotional standpoint. And so the only way that could really work is A, for me to be in touch with the writers, early on, and B, for Jen Taylor and I to work together, which we had never done. I had never met Jen until about 2 years ago. we met at the 10th anniversary of Halo Combat Evolved, the big Halo Fest up in Seattle. That's the first time we'd ever laid eyes on each other. Since then, we've become good friends, and it's been a great relationship. But for us to be able to really do what was going to be required with Halo 4, we really needed to be together in the same room, doing it at the same time, and so that was just a very exciting experience for me to do it that way, and it was very emotional. There were times. The big scene at the end where she dies. Uh-oh, spoiler alert.
It's okay. I think you're safe to say it now.
That was a very emotional scene for me to do. I remember when we did it, they had, you have on the other side of the glass, you have the director, you have the producer, you have a couple of writers, some other people from 343, and then Jen and I in the sound booth. And I asked and then they had some people filming. There's a sort of a making of video that's out there that shows us in the room recording our lines. And I asked that all those people leave, and that we just have a minimal amount of people in the studio at the time, because I was going to have to pull some things out that were not necessarily comfortable, which was the whole idea, and that was what Master Chief was going through, is that he was touching some emotions that he either didn't know he had or was not comfortable showing. So for me to be able to try to do that in a true way, it required sort of opening up in a way that was not necessarily comfortable, and which was the whole point. And hopefully that came across in the game. That was what we were trying to go for. So that's really what it was. In the first three games, emotion didn't really figure into it with him, but in the last game it did in a big way. And I'm guessing that it's going to proceed further in that direction as we get into Halo 5. And
I definitely felt that in 4 there was more of a kind of back and forth dialogue going on in the game than there were in previous.
Yeah,
So
and the only way to really do that well, I mean, you can do it separately, and it's done all the time, but I appreciated the fact that we were able to be there together, and to be with the writers as well, and because sometimes scripts get changed on the fly, and so the only real practical way to do that is to have the guy who's writing it be there with you, and he watches it unfold, and they realize, well, certain things worked and certain things didn't work, so you need to make changes, and it was just more expedient to be able to do that when we're all together in the room doing it at the same time. Yep.
Matt Kelsey, Zombies on my blog, cover a lot of video games, conventions, things like that. So other than story-wise, which is obviously different from the original trilogy and going forward,
Right.
what other kind of changes or differences have you noticed that we may not know about going from Bungie to 343?
Well, I get asked that a lot, and look, if it wasn't for Bungie, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you. And particularly Marty O'Donnell, who is the one who cast the voices in the first place and wrote all the music and everything. And he was my contact when we first started. Bungie was still located in Chicago, where I'm at. And so I owe a debt of gratitude to him and to the entire Bungie crew that I could not possibly repay. Having said that, obviously Bungie got to a point where they wanted to move on, and that's why they left Halo behind and have moved on. So you're working with an entirely new crew at that point, and you're forging new relationships. What put me at ease right away was that these people have a passion for the game that goes beyond the financial implications of it. Obviously Halo's a moneymaker. I think that's pretty obvious. But in my opinion, the reason why it's a moneymaker is because with both Bungie and 343 is that the people who are, sort of caretakers of the franchise have a love for it that goes beyond its commercial success. And that was comforting to me because, you could run into a situation where, all of a sudden you start seeing Master Chief on the back of cereal boxes, and there's not a real concern for the franchise going forward. And what became obvious to me from the very beginning with every single person that I was either working with directly or had a major influence in the outcome of Halo, had a love for it. I mean, these guys are all gamers. They're all into it. I mean, they would be doing this whether they were getting paid for it or not. So that makes my job that much easier because there's a trust there. And once we established, once they trusted me and I trusted them, the rest of it became easy, to move forward. So that was, sort of, I sort of had my antenna up with that right away, and I'm sure they did with me. I mean, we sort of, it's kind of like a new relationship. You sort of, you do this little dance to see, okay, can we work with this guy, and can I work with these people? And it became, apparent fairly quickly that we were going to do well together, and I think the results speak for themselves. So, it was pretty cool.
The first three, he was kind of more silent, but strong but silent, and now he's,
Yeah.
were you ever hesitant with all the dialogue and all the situations? With
No,
the
I
changes?
couldn't wait. I couldn't wait. I mean, that's really what, it's like I said before, that's where I personally envisioned this going. I think, if you had kept it the way it was, it would have gotten stale. I mean, you can only go so far with, I need a weapon. There's like, okay, and what else you got? So to me, it was an obvious step, but you never know, especially with a new group coming in and taking it over. So it was exciting for me as an actor. It's what actor doesn't want more lines, But it's not about quantity; it's about quality, and so that was the part that just it became exciting to me. And we would have long sessions when I would do Halo 1, 2, and 3. Maximum it was a 2-day job. And and I'm talking about maybe a couple hours a day, and then you'd come back the next day, and maybe there'd be some fixes or rewrites or whatever, and then maybe it might have a third day of what I call the death sessions, where the people play the game when they screw up, and Master Chief gets killed. You got to have a noise for that. So we would do a couple hours of me just screaming and dying and killing and maiming and being injured and injuring other people, and it was it was a bit grueling. When we went in to do Halo 4, we were doing 8-hour-a-day sessions, which is somewhat unheard of in voiceover. But we would literally be in there all day long for 3 or 4 days. Then I'd come back in a month, we'd do another 3 or 4 days, and then there'd be pickups, along the way. And the clock's ticking the whole time. I remember the day I went in to do a session, and they had actually announced the release date. And so now it's like, and once that's out, it's like that game's coming out, goddammit, it's coming out that day, and so the pressure was on to get it done and get it done right. So to be able to flesh him out that way was just a tremendous experience, and one I hope to expand upon here in the not too distant future. Yes.
I'm Charlie with also the Chainsaw Buffet podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, whether it be radio or voiceover, what was the sort of decision process, the experiences that led you to decide to do voice work for a living?
That's my two things. Growing up, I was just a music junkie. I loved rock and roll from the time, the Beatles came out, and wanted to, figure out some way to stay close to that. And so, when I was in school, when I was in college, I played in a band. I played drums in the band, and we were getting fairly good at the time, and it was getting to the point where we were going to have to make a decision about, what we were going, if we were going to pursue this, seriously, i.e., quit school, go on the road, blah blah blah. And that's what my heart wanted to do. But fortunately, there was a little guy here saying, "Dude, you're gonna make your living as a drummer in a rock and roll band." It just the pitfalls were too numerous to mention. And so I shifted, the band broke up, we shifted gears, and I got into radio at the college station. And my goal really was I wanted to be a record producer. And I thought, okay, well, radio might be a nice entree into that, and it allowed me to stay close to what my first love was, which was the music. So, I got into radio with the intention of moving on eventually into, some sort of record production. Well, I got stuck, my ego was, just just having too much fun doing the radio thing. And I stayed with it, and I've been doing it ever since. And from that, voiceover oftentimes can be a natural extension of that. When I was out in LA, I started actually producing commercials for concert promoters and for record companies for their new releases and stuff like that. And I would do the whole production part of it and voice it. And so that was a lot of fun, but it was a little limiting. And I got more and more attracted. I got better at the voiceover than I was at the producing part. So I got an agent and started doing commercial voiceover in LA. And then moved to Chicago in '97, continued that. And, of course, the fortuitous thing was that Bungie happened to be there, and Marty was a fan of mine from the radio, which is how he knew I was around, and he thought I might have the right voice for this character that they were developing, and that's where that happened. So it's sort of this, I often tell people, it's funny how life takes turns that you don't expect. And to say that I did not expect this would be an understatement. I had no idea where this was going to lead, but you never know. And it's like my agent says, never take yourself out of the game. You always stay in the game because you never know where it's going to take you. And this was this unbelievable thing that started from a little. I get a call from my agent, show up here. It's a video game. What? Back for me, it was, I was like, okay, this job, I did the job, it was fun, and moved on. And, 6 months later, I'm visiting a friend down in Florida, and I had completely forgotten about this session. You do sessions all the time, and the one thing about commercial voiceover is, whether or not what you did was a success. There's a direct correlation between that and getting checks in the mail. If you get checks in the mail, it was a success. If you didn't, it wasn't. Well, with video games, it's different because there's no residuals. So you do the job, you get paid for the job, and that's the end of your relationship, theoretically, with that job. So I'm down at this, visiting a friend down in Palm Beach, and I walked through his house one morning, and his kids are playing Halo, and I stopped and I said, I think I voiced a character in that game. And these kids, up until that moment, were completely unimpressed with anything that I had done in my life up to that point. My friend said, Steve's on the radio in Chicago. Yeah, I tell you, it has a big radio show, and they're he's completely bored. And occasionally you'll hear his voice on TV commercials, and they were unimpressed, would not even come close to describing it. Well, when I said I think I voiced a character on this game, they stopped. And, what? Who? And I had actually forgotten his name. It had been that long ago, and like I said, these jobs come and go, and you don't live with them. It's always you're on to the next thing. And I said, I don't know, I don't remember his name, but I think he was the main guy. And they said, Master Chief? Yeah, it was Master Chief. Well, literally within 15 minutes, there was probably 30 or 40 kids from the neighborhood outside this guy's door, every one of them holding a copy of the game or an Xbox or something, wanted me to sign it. And I had no idea what was going on. We went down to a GameStop, and they had a life-size cutout of Master Chief in the door, and that was, and I grabbed the game and I looked up, turned it over, and I was on the credits. Yeah, I guess I did do that, and there's my name right there. It says I did it. and that was it. I mean, it was off to the races at that point, it was a life altering. What that little job turned out to be a life altering, experience, and that was what 12 years ago, 2001. You just never know where things are going to take you, and it's been a wild ride, but it's been fantastic and continues to go. So, yeah.
My first experience with Halo was, I was in the military at the time when we first started playing, and we were pulling a shift at CQ, and my friend rolled out the big TV. He's like, "You got to play this game. You got to play this game." So I was actually kind of wondering how many military service members have actually come up to you and been like, "You have no idea how many of our lives that you've saved, because we would have gone nuts."
Yeah, no, that's very cool, and that's a very satisfying thing for me personally. I got a guy contacted me who was in Iraq at the time, and was telling me, a story very similar to the one you're telling me, that how they, this is how they, kept their sanity is playing Halo, and they had on a wall, there was a mural on a building, and it was a huge scene from the game with Master Chief, and they, I mean, as big as this wall behind me. And yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is, I sent him a bunch of stuff and some autographs and all that, but because these guys are doing it for real. I mean, you guys are, I'm playing a game. That's not a game over there. And to think that you can bring these guys, some moment of distraction, if nothing else, is beyond rewarding. The other thing I hear a lot is guys who will say, and women occasionally, who will say, they'll say either two things: "You're the reason I got through college," or "You're the reason I didn't get through college." Right. it's the stories, that, and I think that's the joy of coming to conventions. I had for years turned down going to cons because I didn't know that I had anything to contribute. I don't play the game. I'm not a gamer. I've tried, but when you get your ass kicked by 11-year-olds, after a while, maybe this isn't for me. And so from a gaming standpoint, I didn't think I had anything to contribute, and so I would turn down these offers all the time. And then one time, a guy called and he wanted me to come down to a store opening in Fort Lauderdale, and it was November in Chicago. He's offered me a free plane ticket down to Fort Lauderdale. I'm like, okay, what the hell? And that was my introduction into this world. And I end up talking to a lot of people who tell me stories similar to yours and others about how important it was to them and how important the story is. And I think, not to sort of shift gears here, but my own belief is that one of the reasons why Halo is as successful as it is because of the story. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of great games out there, and there are games out there that are just as impressive technically, visually. What you can do as a gamer. Halo is not necessarily, in my opinion, unique in that area. Where it is unique is that behind all the shooter part of it, is a story, and it's a continuing story. And this I credit, to the Bungie guys and now to the 343 guys who have kept this story intact and involved and evolved, and that's what makes it, in my opinion, unique in the video game world is that they have been able to weave a story. And what other video game has books and graphic novels and comic books and all these other ancillary things beyond just the game? Mm-hmm. That has to be there because there is a story to tell and people get into the story. And so, that's what impresses me is that's what keeps people attached to it. And so when I meet people that have a real attachment to my character or to Cortana or to the game in general, that's what they're connecting with. And that's what makes video games, this unique experience. When I grew up, that didn't exist, and so could live your fantasies through, films and TV shows and the superheroes of those days, but you couldn't control them. Now, with the way things have gone, you have an active role in what happens to these characters, and I think that draws the participant in a way that was not available 20 years ago or 25 years ago. And so it's good because I run into people who are just seriously really attached to it, much more than just, wow, that's a really cool game. It's deeper than that. And at first I couldn't figure, well, why is it so deep? And I think it's because A, there's a story going on here that's a very involved story, and B, you are an active participant in how that story develops. And to be a part of that, to have some minor part in that whole story is just awesome. And it took me a while to get it, but I think I get it now.